Well, welcome back to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Shannick.
And I'm Corey.
And we're so thankful that you're joining us this second episode of 2024. We're so thankful that you're joining us wherever you're listening from. We appreciate you. Those of you joining us on YouTube, thank you so much. As a matter of fact, last episode, we talked about this is the year that's going to be like childlike, right, with us, not childish.
Yeah, childlikeness.
Return to childlikeness. And I really didn't follow up on the YouTube videos, whether or not people looked at our faces or your face in particular with those little things. I don't know if people commented or not, but we appreciate you, those of you watching on YouTube.
I can check.
And yeah, check out, see if anybody responded. I actually didn't get any responses either to our question or our challenge for people to reach out and let us know what was their favorite episode, what maybe challenged them. So if you haven't done so, reach out, leave a review.
Do it.
Email us, either Shannick or Corey at hillcity.tv. Let us know what episode last year was your favorite, or maybe what episode challenged you the most. We really want to hear that, and we'd love to hear it so we can do also a follow-up podcast this year of what last year was your favorite episode.
Yeah. Hey, we only have one comment. It's from Peter Jans 1178. So holler at you. Thank you for checking us out on YouTube.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think he is one of our listeners from the Netherlands. So
shout out the Netherlands.
Yeah,
we love
Peter,
the Netherlands.
Yeah, we do.
Speaking of 2024, we
Yeah.
will be back this fall. So stay tuned.
Yeah, so it's amazing. Also, I want to say thank you for all of you who have reached out, who watched our short clip of last week where we were trying to figure out how many years we've been doing this podcast, which was for 3-4 years, but I know the math still doesn't compute for you.
I'm not even going to explain myself. One, you didn't let me explain myself. And two, when I did explain myself off the mic, you still made me feel like an idiot. So
yeah, well, because it's your math. It's no one else's math. And
have you seen girl math? Have you seen
with
girl
the
math?
Shopping?
Yes, it's the most infuriating thing. Julia laughs about it all the time. She's like, well, if I have cash, it doesn't count because it's not a part of our numbers on our statements.
Yeah,
so I'm like, I get so mad.
No, that's
girl
funny.
math.
No, but we had a good time with that, and thank you for watching that. Thank you for reaching out. I think it was one of our most viewed clips that we've put out there in a while. But it was funny. It was great, and we love that. So we're going to kick off something new. We're not necessarily going to be tied to a series the next few weeks, but we are going to talk about mental fitness, if you will. We ended the year here at Hill City last year with a sermon series called Navigating Minefields, really talking about conquering our negative thoughts, overcoming negative self-talk, and really thriving as sons and daughters, knowing our identity. And I know for me personally, it was one of the most helpful sermon series that we've done as a church in a very long time for me. And so I just thought it'd be great on this podcast if we just kind of went through that sermon series, if you will, and we kind of picked some things from it, things that we thought that might help you to start off the year right and get mentally fit and overcome some of that negative thinking and really get you to a place where you are truly thriving in life. That's the really point of this podcast, to offer resources, offer help to you so that you can really get emotionally, physically, spiritually healthy, because we want that for you in your life. And we thought that this would be a great way to unpack some of those things we had in the series that will really be a help to you in this season of life as we kick off a new year. I know a lot of times around this time, people are doing that new year, new you. This is kind of our version of that.
I think we did that on the podcast before.
Did we? I think we did too. That's why I mentioned it.
But we went through Daniel Eppen's 5Fs, so it was pretty little different.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. If this is going to be the year of childlikeness, there's a lot of things we got to talk about. One of them is we must no longer be okay with functioning in dysfunction, which so many people, just because that's their norm, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is a bad thing, but they're just so unaware of the dysfunction that they live in. And so it's more of like, hey, we're going to help you get off of autopilot this year so that you can wake up to your emotions that you've been sweeping under the rug, help you identify some of them, help you conquer some of the chaos that you live in. I know so many young girls that will go back to chaotic relationships just because that's the norm for them. And when good relationships, when they're involved in good relationships, they get uncomfortable, they don't know how to act, and they want to break it off with good guys because they only know abuse. And that's not okay. And so maybe just kind of pinpointing some of those things. And so in my opinion, we have to talk about mental fitness. And notice we did not say mental toughness. There is a mass difference between mental fitness and mental toughness. And we're not just sugarcoating our emotions. Like, oh, just toughen up. You got to be better. That's not what this is about.
Right.
Fitness is a journey, just like when you're literally trying to lose weight. Sure, you might be able to shed a couple pounds right off the bat and it gets encouraging, and then it gets harder and harder. But fitness is a lifetime journey. Mental fitness is a lifetime journey. We're not telling you that you got to be overcoming all your chaos and dysfunction overnight. No, this is a process. So we must address the lies that we believe in, how we think, how to deal with our emotions, disappointments in a healthy way. And I think one of the greatest examples still stems from over 10 years ago, when we went to Aruba. Why don't you share that story in the cab?
Yeah, when was that 2013?
2013.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so we got there and we realized that everywhere we went, we saw signs that said One Happy Island. And we were like, what in the world is up with this? Like literally that is like everywhere.
When you
on
go
the
to
island.
New York and you see those I love New York,
yeah.
It was like t-shirts, hats, pins, banners.
Yeah.
Huge.
And we did a little research on it. What we came to find out was Aruba had been one of the worst islands as far as like tourism and stuff. They declined. No one wanted to go there because of crime, because people weren't taking care of things. Litter was everywhere.
Think
all
like,
of these.
what was that girl that went missing in 06? And the
Anne
Hathaway or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So remember that.
And so like that was involved in it. And so people just wanted to stay away from the island. But the people that live there are thinking like, no, we got to change the culture of the entire island. We got to get people to buy in that this is a great place to live. It's an amazing island, and the people here are lovely. They're beautiful. And when you come to the island, we want people to experience what? Happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started this slogan, One Happy Island. And really everybody on the island bought into this, and they promoted it, not just with signs, but with how they interacted with each other, with people that came. And so Aruba, in a 10-year span.
It was a 3-year span.
Was
from
it
2010 to 2013.
Okay.
It was getting better, but had already seen improvement in 3 years.
Yeah. So in a 3-year span, they became one of the lowest.
Or I guess 4 years.
From one of the lowest.
10, 11, 12, 13.
Okay, yeah. From one of the lowest visited islands to like number one, like the number one tourist destination for Caribbean islands, because everyone bought into this culture piece that we are one happy island.
Yeah, and
so,
this was right before Shancock Banty.
It was.
So what an incredible Aruba trip in 2013. But if you're familiar with that story, it might be because we did a sermon series as a church like 2014 around culture.
Just around culture, yeah.
We this is like the intro to my book, how to, if you haven't got my book, What If I Told You, the Devo, you should go do it. I'm actually hearing so much content from people, or so much affirmation, and I appreciate that so much. But it's really just creating this culture of proper self-talk. And this is our challenge for you. In fact, if you go through my Devo, one of the challenges you have to do is create a personal motto.
Right.
And if you signed up for my ZLD class, which starts in February, this is your first week's homework, is creating this personal motto very similar to One Happy Island.
Yep.
And because it's important, as Proverbs 23:7 says, as a man thinks, he is, or as a woman thinks, she is. Like how you think about yourself is the most important thinking you'll do. You actually won't be able to love other people well until you love yourself first. And 2 Corinthians 10:5 uses this war term of taking captive each thought and make it obedient to Christ, which means you won't always be able to control the thoughts you have, but you can control the thoughts you hold on to type thing.
Yeah.
And it's really, really important that we start getting our self-talk right.
Yeah, and I love that. I'm going to repeat that. If you missed that, Corey just said, you cannot control all the thoughts you have, but you can control the thoughts you hold on to. And we think that that is so important as you craft and create the culture for your life and how you talk about yourself, how you talk to yourself, and how you view yourself ultimately is what we're trying to get to the heart of.
Yeah. So if you have a belief, they teach us this in the counseling, and this is what I teach people as well. I think it came from Dr. Townsend, but if you have a belief that comes from shame, the next thing that will happen is blame. You'll start to blame people because of a shameful experience or something you either did or something happened to you. And that leads to then behavior. That behavior, however, is not who you are. It's what you're doing out of a fear of being rejected.
Yeah.
And so you have to, so shame, blame, and then behavior. But that behavior is a lie. It's just this wall you've put up because you don't want other people to reject you.
Yeah, and I don't know if that specifically was from Townsend. What I'm recalling from Townsend is this cycle that you mentioned, but he says that it is shame, fear, and then control. You have shame that comes in, then you have some fear based on that shame. Either people are going to find out, or a fear that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, all of these things. And then so you do what? Your behavior, you try to control people around you, you try to control situations, you try to control circumstances. And a lot of things are out of your control. And when things are out of your control, that leads to just more shame that comes in when things happen or things are said, which then increases your fear, which then increases your control. It's like this vicious cycle that people live in: shame, fear, control. And we're talking about breaking that cycle.
Yeah, for sure. And some practical stuff. We've talked about this on the podcast before we get into the mental fitness challenge, but there are the 5 R's. Again, I put this in the book. This is how you conquer a negative thought. It's really important for you. If you want to deal with your fear, shame, rejection, or fear, shame, control, all that stuff, this is that 5 process. It's a quick process. Now it's so much deeper than what we're just going to explain it. But they're the 5 R's. You got to recognize it, the negative thought. You have to release it. You have to rewire your thinking. You have to redevelop your habits, and then repeat the process while giving yourself grace. And I know we talked about this in episode 146 in greater detail, but these 5 R's are a daily thing. You're recognizing that negative thought. So what is something that you find yourself saying over and over, or that you believe, maybe even subconsciously, that you're not even aware of? Do you have an example off the top of your head?
Well,
because you've done a lot of work on this.
I've done a lot of work, and I would say, a lot of the work that we did through TLP, a lot of the work that I've done after reading your devotion, and just the positive self-talk over myself has helped tremendously. But yeah, I would say, like, one of the negative things that I continually deal with is this idea that people won't like me if I'm too demanding. Or I put too many restrictions or too much on people. So then I carry it. Again, that's part of that imposter syndrome that I've tried to recover from, that I have to be Superman. I have to do it all. So I can't ask other people
You've
to
done
do
a good
what
job
I've been doing
with that, by the way.
But it's still, it's still a recurring thing. Like people won't like me. Again, if I'm too demanding, that's the only way maybe I know how to put it right now. And so I try not to be too demanding or too dominating or to take charge, because sometimes I feel like I don't want that for myself. And so I don't want to put that on other people. And so I think that might be a negative self-talk, like understanding, wait, no, people will like me, whether I'm this way or that way. Sometimes maybe people want me to step up and be more demanding as a leader. There are a lot of things that I've tried to overcome and conquer, but I have to recognize that is a negative thought. And then I have to, again, go through the process of releasing it. And then the rewiring my thinking in that is, okay, well, maybe I'm not that dominating, even when I think that I am. So then I can ask them people.
Right now?
It's just funny because we had this conversation right before we recorded about one specific thing that I thought I didn't really want to be demanding of. And you're like, no, step up and be demanding in this. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be. And so it's funny, you just called me out and said you got an example when we just talked about this.
I did that.
But no, rewiring my thinking on understanding who I am and the authority that I do carry, and the avenues where I do need to call people to maybe higher standards, or to demand better, or demand more from people. And I'm okay to do that in the position that I've been put in, whether or not people like it or not.
How do you redevelop your habits then around that?
Well, redeveloping my habits, it comes from conversations. For me, it goes back to connection and having people in my life that I can say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. Am I being too demanding with this? Am I being like a micromanager? Am I being this way by calling this out? And then people can say yes or no, or people can give advice, or, like there's safety in a multitude of counselors. So there's safety in the fact that I can understand.
You challenge that. There's not safety, right? There's wisdom.
No, it's not wisdom.
Oh, it's not
safety.
wisdom. Yeah. I love that.
It's not wisdom in a multitude of counselors.
It's safety.
Counselors.
I
It's
love
safety.
that.
And so, yeah, it's just one of those things where, for me, it comes from connection with other people. That's how I'll redevelop that habit.
And then you just repeat.
And then I get other people to speak into my life that will say, no, even if some people might not like the decision, it doesn't mean that they don't like you.
Yeah. I got a question about that. Well, but first, if people aren't going to like you because you're too demanding, they're going to find a different reason to not like you.
Yeah.
So that's one of those fears that's like not real. Like it's real to you, but it's not a truth. Do you feel like in that specific example, when you're talking about recognizing the negative thought, releasing it, rewiring your thinking about it, that tension though, I don't know if it's ever something you overcome. I think and I hate using the word balance but we use the word
Rhythm.
riding the rhythm. Do you think that's one of those tensions that you'll always just be in that rhythm of?
I think as a leader, I'll have to try to live in the rhythm of when, maybe when to step up and be more domineering, if you will, as a leader, to call out things or to demand certain things from.
So it's not necessarily a negative. I mean, it can be negative if you find your identity or are worried about making those decisions, but it can be one of those things that you're just always having conversations with people about it to make sure that you're not overbearing, but also still have a high standard and living in that tension. Because as you were speaking, I was like, man, some of these negative thoughts that we think about ourselves, they're not necessarily, they are negative if you're beating yourself up, but maybe they're more of a tension. I know we talked about those 7 tensions in leadership that are good tensions to live in that help you become a better leader in that specific aspect. And in whatever world if there's a negative thought, maybe it is an actual negative thought you need to conquer, but maybe it's just a tension that you're living in.
Yeah. Well, the negative thought would be then, okay, I'm not that great of a leader.
Okay. So then you would kill that. So that's what you would focus with the 5 R's, not the tension. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I love that. I know as we'll close, we'll give you 5 areas of mental fitness, specifically even where you're navigating minefields, so that you're no longer being okay with living in dysfunction. And we've talked about this in episode 108. We titled it "The Grasshopper Mentality." Unpacked Numbers chapter 13 to a great extension. But also, like I do a whole day on this thought in my book, Grasshopper Mentality. I call it the Mamba Mentality. But it's my favorite passage of scripture to talk about when talking about conquering your feelings and emotions is Numbers 13, when the 10 spies came back and overshadowed what the 2 spies were saying. They brought a negative report and they said, we are grasshoppers in our eyes, and that's what we are to them. And it's such a powerful lesson of how you speak about yourself is ultimately what you will become.
Right.
So when you're a child of God, you'll live like a child of God. Therefore, you'll be loving. So it's not this like, oh, you got to be careful telling everybody that they're loved. No. When people know they're loved, they won't abuse it, because they will just love out of the essence of knowing that they're loved. Usually the people that abuse love are people that are secretly like abusing themselves. Whatever.
No, it's fine. No. And so what we're going to do is just unpack the 5 areas of mental fitness. And again, this is fitness, not toughness. And fitness, it's a journey, right?
Yep.
When you think about physical fitness, you don't start off, bench pressing or deadlifting or whatever it is, like, or running a marathon day one. Like, you start off small and then you grow and mature into those things. But the first area is mental fitness starts with empathy for self. It requires vulnerability and it fuels courage. So just like earlier, like this idea that I opened up, hey, this is what I'm kind of feeling. The one negative self-talk that I had is maybe I'm not a great leader. And because of this, or the tensions that I live in. And so really I have to first give myself empathy. I have to understand, wait, I'm the one that's called and I'm the one that's been given authority to do these things. And so if I'm in this position, ultimately I have to have some level of leadership. I've been able to, over a decade lead here at Hill City. So obviously I can have some empathy for myself in being a leader here, but then you can begin to have courage and make decisions and live in that tension and live with the decisions that you make as a leader, knowing that you can have empathy for yourself.
Honestly, one of my favorite things about you, when you're in this tension, you are vulnerable because you'll share the tension with the staff and be like, listen, this certain thing, I don't want to make mandatory, but I feel like I have to, blah, blah, blah. But then you let the whole team in on that journey. And I think that has been easier, not only to make certain things mandatory in that specific example, but it's been easier, at least for me as a staff member, to be like, okay, yeah, I can hear your heart in it. And I think sometimes we are so scared of being vulnerable in whatever it is that we need to share that we don't share it. And I think you would be surprised at how well people respond to your vulnerability.
Yeah, and then I would say that's true for all of you who are listening to this. Like, as you start sharing and being vulnerable, what you'll discover is that people actually lean into that. They don't run away. They're not scared of it. They don't bash it. They actually lean in and encourage more of it, which then encourages them to be vulnerable in areas. And it's one of my favorite things about the show Ted Lasso.
I love it.
And I know you love that quote, be less judgmental, more curious, right? Which is amazing to unpack and stuff. But there's a clip, and I think I showed it to the staff, where they're having a little coaches meeting right before they go out. And finally, Ted Lasso breaks down and he says, I've been having panic attacks. This is why I ran. This is what happened. And then they go around the room and the guys are like, man, I shroomed out last week and I, all this other stuff, but they're being vulnerable. Hey, I dropped the ball and I forgot to schedule this person. And that's why we missed out on having this incredible player on the team, because I forgot to schedule it. And so they go around sharing their weaknesses, vulnerabilities, where they messed up. And then it's like, it brought everybody together. And then one person was vulnerable. Everybody started being vulnerable.
Yeah. It's a great scene.
Yeah. It's an incredible scene in that show, but I thought it just showed the power of vulnerability.
Yeah. If you're scared to be vulnerable, here's my challenge for you. Give it a test. And like you just said, the people that are in your corner will always lean in. And sometimes you'll be shocked at what they share with you. And they're like, man, I was kind of waiting for you to be vulnerable before me. Your vulnerability gave me the courage to be vulnerable. But the people that are scared of that or run from it, in my opinion, I would say are people that you probably need not to be involved in your life anyways.
Yeah.
Because we need that vulnerability to thrive with actual real connection so that we can thrive in life. And so mental fitness starts with empathy for self, requires vulnerability, and fuels courage. The second one is mental fitness thrives with a speedy recovery time. And we put that in there. It's actually stolen from Peter Lencioni. He does an incredible work with the Saboteurs. He's been in every Fortune 100 company teaching this. It's an incredible thing. If you haven't done the Saboteurs, we did a whole episode on Saboteurs. But he talks about this illustration of like a tennis player or a golf player. And there's statistics on this which were mind-blowing to research. I think it's like 80% of tennis players, when they have a bad shot, if they hit the next shot good, it's because they have a speedy recovery time in how they think about themselves. But if it goes into the net, they say that it's because like 80% of them have terrible recovery time. Like they can't get over their most recent mistake.
Right.
And so if you think about that tennis player that hits a bad shot, it's like if they don't have mental fitness, 80% chance of hitting it into the net the very next shot.
Yeah. And it's the same. I mean, you can talk about it like almost all sports, but especially even basketball more than almost anyone. Someone misses a shot, they get down on themselves, and then guess what? They have a run of 4 or 5 shots that they miss. And that's why they talk about, these basketball players, man, get an easy layup. Just see that ball go through the hoop.
See the ball go
get to the rim, to the rim, get fouled, get to the free throw line, shoot a free throw, watch it go in, and then that'll help develop more shots going in. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
with that.
But speedy recovery time, think about that outside of sports is, okay, you made maybe even a major mistake. Like your recovery time in how you speak to yourself and how you process whatever it is that failed or didn't come to fruition the way that you expected it, like that matters. And so mental fitness, again, we're not expecting you to have mental fitness overnight or even in a couple of weeks or months. This is a process that once you get more familiar and aware of your recovery time and own it, label it, then you'll be able to have more endurance to get more recovery time quicker.
Yeah, and I think this third one actually goes right along with this speedy recovery time, and it's the idea that mental fitness recognizes that we must own our emotions, they don't own us.
I love it.
Meaning that, we no longer say things like, well, I am angry. That's an identity piece. No, we're feeling angry. We're not trying to attach emotion to our identity and who we are.
Right.
So when we walk that out, it does help in the recovery time. No, I'm not angry. I might be feeling angry now. Why am I feeling angry at this time? What do I need to do about it? How do I need to release it? How do I need to walk this out? And so it's one of those things where it just helps that process of maybe getting through an emotion and what that emotion is revealing in you. Because that's really all emotions are, right? I know, I think it was Jenny Tackett who came in and helped lead some TLP stuff. She just talked about how emotions are indifferent. They're neutral, right? All they are indicators, just like an indicator on a car you're driving, the check engine light goes off or the gas light goes off. It's just an indicator that something is happening or something is going wrong or something is triggering some feeling in there. So this emotion might be a feeling of anger, but then you got to get to the root. Okay, why is this triggering anger in me? What is that feeling? Where's that coming from? And so it's just a process.
And it's usually not that event. Usually it's something previously that event is just causing that impulsive response, which this is why we do the counseling world. I love helping people figure out those wounds or those triggers, because I love what you just said. Yeah, we are no longer making our emotions our identity. I am not sad. I am feeling sad. And those shifts, you don't think they're that big of a deal, but I've seen it literally in the counseling world, and I've experienced it personally. Once you make those tiny shifts, you can actually deal with so many things that is preventing you from actually having mental fitness. The fourth one is mental fitness understands people are not the problem. People have problems. And
huge.
this is one thing I teach even in my class. If you can get this piece, specifically with the people that you work with, that you maybe don't even like, when you understand that they are not the problem, they have problems, that's when empathy starts to dwell in your spirit. And maybe you go to that person, okay, you are actually missing deadlines. You are actually missing, like, you're not a good employee. What's going on in your life? And maybe you can pinpoint they're going through a lot, and maybe that's why they're not hitting certain deadlines or whatnot. Or maybe that you do need to fire them. And that's kind of not really nice in this specific area of.
That's okay.
No, it's not nice. Sometimes you do need to fire people. I was going to sugarcoat it. But there, John Milton, he was a poet from the 1600s. He says this: the mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of a hell and a hell of a heaven. And I love that because, yeah, maybe you don't like your workplace and you view it as hell. Well, guess what? If you're going to view your workplace as hell, that's what it will be. But you can make a heaven in your hell.
Yeah.
In how you view the people, they're recognizing that they are not the problem, they have problems. All of us. No one is a problem. They have problems. And maybe they're not a right fit. That's what I meant by firing someone. Maybe they're not a right fit for that specific job. But maybe if we can dive into the empathy realm and see what's going on in people's lives, you'll be shocked at how different they become.
Yeah, no, it's so good. And then the last area that we want to encourage you in and challenge you in with this idea of mental fitness is that mental fitness values connection over being correct. And this is a huge one in this arena of getting mentally fit. Whenever you can mature to a place where you don't have to keep coming back with the last word, you don't have to correct people. I'm not saying that you can't have your own opinions, but it doesn't have to lead you to like dominate over people, to belittle people, to make people feel inferior. Because if you're using your correctness to make people feel inferior, I would say that you are so far from the kingdom of God that you can't even realize it. And I think we need to be people that values this connection piece. And like you just said, it's seeing people for who they are and that they're not the problem. You know, they might have problems. They're not the problem, like you just talked about. But how can I connect? How can I come in and make a connection with what they're going through, what they're feeling, why they're maybe missing deadline, whatever, you know, all the stuff that you just mentioned. Or maybe they're outwardly expressing things in a way that's very confrontational and we don't like that. Whatever the case may be, I think we can look past that to realize, okay, no, I need to value this person. Can I connect with this person to develop the relationship so that I think all relationships in the kingdom are mutually beneficial. So we can come along and help someone, but in the same time, we can be helped ourselves. Like we can get understanding, we can learn, we can grow in areas in our own life, even helping someone else in what they're going through or dealing with. And so I think that's the avenue of mental fitness, and probably the highest level of someone who would be considered mentally fit is that they do value that connection over being correct.
Yeah, and it is an election year, so do with that what you need.
Yeah.
I think you used to teach, I actually heard it first from you, is this idea of you can teach every single person something, but you can learn from every single person you meet something from them. And that gives that, you know, humble piece of like, yeah, you know, like of course I can teach any single person something, but so can they. They can teach me something. And just understanding like, yeah, we're looking to connect with souls, not necessarily be correct. And that prevents emotions from escalating, which again, it's usually not that situation or conversation. It's probably something deeper than that goes back to a trauma experience. But yeah, mental fitness is really important to start. So hopefully you take us up on this journey. Remember, number one, mental fitness starts with empathy for self, requires vulnerability, and fuels courage. Mental fitness thrives with a speedy recovery time. Mental fitness recognizes we must own our emotions. They don't own us. Mental fitness understands people are not the problem. People have problems. And mental fitness values connection over being correct.
Yeah, love it. So we encourage you to join us over the next few weeks as we continue to get mentally fit in our thinking, in our interaction with people. And I think this is going to be a great start to the new year for us to be people that are truly thriving in life, because that's what we want for you. So if this episode challenged you or maybe encouraged you in some way, we would ask that you would share this podcast with a friend, family member, coworker, Share it with them, have them listen, have conversation around it. And again, take us up on our offer, reach out to us, let us know what your favorite podcast of 2023 was. And then so we can do a follow-up podcast to that. And we'll give you a little shout out too. Oh yeah, I forgot to ask you earlier, man, Lions. How do you feel about the Lions getting
talk about it next
home
week.
game?
We'll talk about it next week. Go Lions.
You're going to talk about it after they play?
Yeah. Win or lose.
Well, how you feel about this
so
coming
excited.
up week?
So excited, but I think the NFL is rigged.
Why do you think the NFL is rigged? The storylines?
I can't. Maybe another episode.
All right. Well, with that, just know you are loved and there's nothing you can do about it.